Hey guys, it's Amy, and just to remind you guys, my topic is on drug pricing. So, how is it that the pharmaceutical companies can charge patients $100,000, $200,000, or even $500,000 a year for drugs, many of which aren't even curative? Abiraterone, for instance, is a drug used to treat metastatic prostate cancer. The Food and Drug Administration initially approved it in 2011 to treat patients who failed to respond to previous chemotherapy, but it doesn't cure prostate cancer. According to the U.S. National Library of Medicine, the drug extends life on average by 4 months, but at its lowest price, it costs around $10,000 a month. To justify the price, the company who owns Abiraterone, Janssen Biotech, stated that we have an obligation to ensure that the sale of our medicines provides us with the resources necessary to invest in future research and development. In other words, the prices are necessary to fund expensive research projects to generate new drugs. This explanation is pretty common among industry executives, and to many Americans, it can seem very plausible and compelling, but invoking high research costs to justify high drug prices is deceptive. No matter the metric, drug prices in the United States are extreme. Many drugs cost more than $120,000 a year, and a few are even closing in on $1 million a year. The Department of Health and Human Services estimates that Americans spend more than $460 billion on drugs, which is 16.7% of total healthcare spending. On average, citizens of other developed countries spend around 56% of what Americans spend on the exact same drug. However, what's hard to see is that if we did lower drug prices, we would be making a trade-off. Lowering drug prices would make pharmaceuticals a less desirable industry to investors, and less investment in the drug industry would mean less research towards new and innovative cures. Right now, the United States is subsidizing the rest of the world's drug research by paying out these really high prices. And if we stop doing that, it would likely mean fewer dollars spent on pharmaceutical research, and which would mean less progress developing new drugs for Americans and everybody else. So the central dilemma in drug pricing policy is this: should we trade off some innovation for some access? The United States has no government panel that negotiates drug prices. There are thousands of health insurance providers and plans all across the country, and each has to negotiate its own prices with drug makers separately and independently. Because Americans are fragmented across all these different health insurers and plans, these health insurers and plans have much less bargaining power to demand lower prices for patients. There isn't much evidence that Americans use extraordinarily high amount of drugs. It's just that when we buy prescription medications, we pay a lot more money for the same drug. The simple explanation for excessive drug pricing is monopoly pricing. Through patent protection and FDA marketing exclusivity, the U.S. government grants pharmaceutical companies a monopoly on brand name drugs. But monopolies are a recipe for excessive prices. A company will raise prices until its profit margins begin to slow down or even drop. Johnson & Johnson advocates eliminating rebates to pharmacy benefit managers in order to slow down these drug prices, like the rate of which they're increasing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the total drug prices would be lowered. The proposal avoids the standard economic response to monopoly pricing, which is price regulation. And in other developed countries, they do regulate drug prices often through price negotiations between the government and health companies. But here, where cuts are made in drug prices is ultimately up to drug companies. Their claims of lower R&D costs appear designed to generate fear, but as some former executives themselves have acknowledged, there isn't a definitive and necessary link between a decline in drug prices and a decline in R&D costs. Therefore, drug companies should make other choices that maximizes and improves the health of all Americans. Thank you.